Welcome to another episode of Things No One Asked For, but I Did Anyway. Today's masterpiece, turning this innocent box camera into something that looks like it escaped from a 1970s spy movie. I bought 3 of these cameras, because apparently one wasn't enough for my questionable experiments. The plan is simple. Keep one original, mod one with the S-mount lens, and take the same shots at the same time to compare. Before we dive into that chaos, let me show you how to perform this lens surgery at home, with minimal regret and, hopefully, all your tools still working afterward. This camera proudly offers 1, 2, and 3 megapixel settings, which sounds impressive until you realize that the 2 and 3 megapixel options are just the 1 megapixel photo awkwardly stretched by software marketing magic. So, to keep things honest and vaguely scientific, all my comparisons will be based on the genuine 1 megapixel images. Alright, time for the operation. Step 1. Turn off the camera. Remove the SD card because we don't want to document the mistakes that are about to happen. Then, grab your trusty surgeon's scalpel and gently lift the top edge to the front lid, just enough to pry it open with your fingers later. Think precision work, but with the emotional stability of a YouTube tutorial. This part is actually easier than with the original Kodak Chamera, because here, you get direct access to the sensor. No acrobatics, no praying to the screw gods. On the original model, you had to go in from the back, remove the mainboard, and basically perform open O-heart surgery just to reach the sensor. So, yes, progress, at least in the fewer emotional breakdowns category. Next step, pop off the original lens protection. Then carefully remove the little security latch on the sensor cable connector. Be gentle here. We're modding a camera, not defusing a bomb. Once that's done, open the connector and you can finally lift the sensor out, like a victorious archaeologist uncovering ancient silicon. Now it's time to deal with the glue that the manufacturer kindly applied to keep curious people like us out. Use whatever tool feels right for the job, side cutters, tweezers, or sheer determination. Once the glue is gone, you can remove the front element. But don't celebrate yet. The actual lens is still screwed into the holder, and yes, you'll have to wrestle it out the old-fashioned way, manually. Grab your caliper and measure the sensor in the most creatively inaccurate way possible. I got about 4 17mm in length and 3 31mm in width, which, according to my highly suspect math, gives roughly an 13 times crop factor compared to a full-frame sensor. Now it's time to pick the surmount lens holder. I've tested more of these than I care to admit, and the best one, in my professional limiter opinion, is the lowest profile type. It lets you install it from the inside and secure it from the outside, which makes the whole thing surprisingly solid and stable. Just one catch, some lenses love focusing way too close to the sensor, so you might need to trim a bit more off the original holder. Side cutter, scalpel, dealer's choice, depending on how lucky you feel today. Time to put the sensor back in place. But before that, I recommend removing the original foam. It's way too thick and stops the sensor from sitting flush against the ribbon connector. I replaced it with a thin strip of double-sided tape, which, of course, turned out too thin, so I folded it over. Perfect engineering, as always. Then peel off the liner, set the sensor back onto the PCB, close the connector, and reapply the security tape. Finally, press the sensor down gently to make sure that tape actually does its job for once. Next, measure the external diameter of the M12 cylinder, about 14mm, which clearly means the front cover needs a bigger hole if we want this beauty to fit through. Time for some precision chaos. Mark the area to cut so you know what's supposed to disappear and what still has a future. Classic old-school workshop habit. Once everything's outlined, it's scalpel time again, surgical vibes only. Cut out a clean 14mm hole and don't forget the soundtrack. Every successful operation deserves good background music. Don't forget to carve out some space on the back of the cover for the surmount holder. Measure the distance between the holes, in my case, that's 20mm, and mark it precisely, or at least as precisely as caffeine allows. Then it's drilling time. Start with the first hole for a 2mm screw and then drill the second one. Once the chaos is done, clean up the shavings, because trust me, you really don't want any of that landing on your naked sensor. Even I have standards. Now, place the S-mount holder into its freshly carved throne. You'll know it's right when it just clicks into place like destiny. Double check that the screw holes actually align. Then add the first screw, but don't tighten it yet. You'll want a bit of wiggle room for the second one to settle properly. Once both are in, give them a confident final twist, but not the kind that strips threads and hearts. Then pop the SD card back in, reattach the front assembly, or if you're a rebel, do that part first. Finally, mount your favorite M12 lens. I've tested quite a few and landed on one with nearly the same field of view as the original toy lens, but with a bit more grown-up glass. Time to fire up the camera, assuming it survived the procedure, and use that tiny rear LCD to nail the perfect focus. If the screen is too small to see anything but your own despair, just connect the camera to a computer and use it as a webcam. No more excuses for missed focus now. Once you've found the sweet spot, add a couple of drops of glue to lock the lens in forever, unless you're one of those lucky people with a mechanical lock ring. I went full retro and used UV glue, so the whole setup took a short vacation in the UV bath. After the glue is hardened, take a minute to admire your creation and feel genuinely proud that you haven't completely destroyed your favorite useless camera in the name of science. And with that, we're finally ready to go outside and shoot some photos. But that, my friends, might deserve a video of its own. For now, let's jump straight into the results. So for a few days, I wandered around with both the original and the modded camera stuffed in my pockets. True field testing, no tripods, no glamour. I snapped random photos with both, trying to match the framing as best as humanly possible, which, as you can see, didn't always go according to plan. For each scene, I took 3 shots per camera and picked the best pair for the benchmark. White balance and exposure compensation were both locked at 0 for all 1 megapixel photos. As for the rest of the settings, your guess is as good as mine. The camera made those decisions all on its own. There's one thing consistent across all the shots. The color grading, saturation, and contrast have leveled up massively. The sharpness, well, not quite as much. Here, you can see something odd. The new lens picks up this strange texture pattern that the original lens simply turned into a soft blur. It's like one camera saw detail and the other just gave up halfway. But don't tune out yet, things are about to get even more interesting. The difference in sharpness really starts to show once the light drops. Just look at these rails. The gap between the two cameras speaks for itself. Let's zoom in and take a closer look. You can clearly see how the new lens handles sharpness and contrast, especially in the background details. The rail lines, the textures, even the tiny electric cables. It's where the mod really starts to earn its keep. Time to torture the cameras and see how they cope in the dark. For some mysterious reason, the modified one insists on taking slightly darker photos. Maybe it's the increased contrast, or maybe it's just being dramatic. Either way, the difference in sharpness is still obvious. Look closely at the small details, the cars, the edges, the reflections. The modded lens keeps them crisp while the original one kinda gives up and goes home early. Not that I usually take photos in these conditions, but in the name of science and human progress, I wanted to cover every possible corner case my imagination could invent. And right here, the sharpness speaks for itself. The parking sign is crisp and clean on the right, while the coupe sign lost some detail with the original lens. The O practically turned into a glowing circle of light, artistic maybe, but definitely not accurate. In this next shot, the original lens decided to get creative and added a reflection below the coupe sign that doesn't actually exist. Fascinating artistic choice, unintended, but interesting nonetheless. Back to daylight again, and the sharpness difference pretty much disappears. You'd have to squint hard to notice any small variations in the background branches. In fact, in this shot, the original lens even shows a bit more contrast. For a moment, I honestly thought I'd mixed up the photos. But even in daylight, a few differences still sneak through, beyond the obvious color grading shift. Take this street sign, for example. The original lens graciously decided to remove the parking restriction entirely. Very optimistic. The background also looks noticeably different, and if you look closely, even the red Pac-Man seems a little happier with the new lens. I'll take that as a win. Once again, the new lens really shines when there's a strong light source in the background. The difference in contrast and detail is immediately visible. Just look at the light pole. In the first image, it practically vanished into the sky, while in the second, it holds its shape nicely thanks to better glass coating and design, a small but satisfying victory for optical engineering. Here's another noticeable difference. In high-contrast shots like this one, with bright white highlights, the original lens introduces quite a bit of pink chromatic aberration across the snow on the pines. The new lens handles it much better, keeping those colors under control. Overall sharpness, though, to my eyes, not a huge difference, at least not enough to start another debate in the comment section. Another shot into the sky. Just to confirm, we can still read the text on the right, but not on the left. And this lovely painting on the house. It got partially amputated in the top left corner, courtesy of some mysterious lens defect. If anyone knows the real cause, please enlighten me in the comments. I'm as curious as you are. And let's wrap things up with a couple of chart shots. Surprisingly, the original camera actually nails the color balance a bit better, probably thanks to the image processor being tuned for its native setup. Nothing a quick Lightroom fix couldn't handle, though. Then there's the sharpness test chart, where both cameras performed heroically poorly. None of the barcodes are readable, but it still tells us something. The original lens shows a drop in sharpness on the far left edge, while the new lens keeps things much more uniform across the frame. So, are you ready to ditch your fancy Sony A7 or that stylish retro Fuji for this pocket-sized wonder? Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this act of pixel-level mischief, don't forget to subscribe before I find another vintage camera to operate on.